For years, the woke left dreamed of escaping to Canada's progressive paradise. But when Bill Maher called out the myth on live TV, he exposed a country crushed by a record 1.3 million surge in newcomers, a housing shortfall set to explode by 3.5 million, and prices now outpacing much of the US. If Canada is the utopia, why are so many Canadians being priced out of their own future? The Canada dream is cracking. What's really behind the collapse? Canada's population grew by more than 1.3 million people in a single year, the largest annual increase on record. That's a jump of about 3%, almost entirely driven by international migration, pushing the country's total to over 41 million. To put that in perspective, if the United States had matched this pace, it would be like adding more than 11 million new residents in just 12 months. But while the population soared, new housing construction lagged far behind. The Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation estimates the country will be short by 3.5 million homes by the end of the decade if current trends continue. This mismatch has sent prices skyward. The median home price in Canada now sits near 750,000 Canadian dollars, compared to about 412,000 US dollars south of the border. In cities like Toronto and Vancouver, the numbers are even more extreme. Median prices have crossed 1.2 million, with vacancy rates below 2%. Rents have jumped more than 10% in a single year, and bidding wars have become routine, even for modest apartments. The numbers tell a clear story. Population growth has collided with a housing supply that simply can't keep up. For many Canadians, dreams of home ownership are slipping further out of reach as each year passes. The promise of affordable, progressive living has been replaced by a scramble for scarce space, and the pressure is only building. Amanda and Greg spent months searching for their first home in Toronto. Each weekend brought another round of open houses and another stack of paperwork. They made more than 20 offers, some for small condos, others for aging townhomes, only to be outbid every single time. The pattern was always the same, a bidding war that pushed prices far above the listing, sometimes by $100,000 or more, often with buyers offering cash. Their realtor warned them not to get their hopes up, but hope is hard to shake when you're building a life together. Then, the rent on their one-bedroom apartment jumped by $600 a month, from $2,300 to $2,900, with just 60 days' notice. Faced with a market that seemed to close its doors at every turn, Amanda and Greg made the decision to leave Toronto behind. They moved to Hamilton, a city with lower prices but still far from affordable. Their story is not unique. News outlets across Canada have followed similar couples, young professionals with steady jobs and good credit, shut out by a system that promised opportunity but delivered scarcity. Bill Maher put it bluntly, "Copy Canada. You don't get affordable living, you get priced out of your own front door." For Amanda and Greg, the numbers aren't just statistics. They're the reason their dream of home ownership now sits an hour down the highway, with no guarantee of a better future. Canada pours nearly 13% of its entire economy into healthcare each year, one of the highest rates among wealthy nations. The number looks impressive on paper, and for decades, supporters of the Canadian system have pointed to universal coverage as a model for the world. A health policy advocate might argue, no one is left behind here. Every Canadian gets care, regardless of income. Clips from parliamentary debates and advocacy groups echo the same refrain. Universal access is the great equalizer. But the reality behind those big numbers tells a different story. Despite all that spending, Canada ranks at the bottom for timely access among its peer countries. The Commonwealth Fund's latest comparison puts Canada last out of 11 high-income nations for wait times, whether it's seeing a family doctor, booking an MRI, or getting surgery. Patients in major cities often wait months for specialist appointments and hours in crowded emergency rooms. The gap between funding and actual service is hard to ignore. For many Canadians, the promise of universal care means rationing by delay instead of by cost. The money is there, but the speed and availability are not. This is the disconnect that critics, including Maher, say is hidden behind the talking points and glossy statistics. Canada's federal debt-to-GDP ratio has climbed to the highest level in the G7, pushing past 45% according to the latest IMF and Bank of Canada figures. This fiscal burden isn't just a number on a chart, it's reshaping daily life in communities across the country. In January 2023, rural Nova Scotia faced a crisis that captured national attention. Charlene Snow, a 67-year-old woman, arrived at her local emergency room only to find the doors locked. Staff shortages had forced multiple ERS in the region to close within a 48-hour stretch. Charlene waited for hours, unable to get care, and died before she could be seen. Internal government emails later revealed that health officials had warned of a tipping point months earlier, but no action was taken in time. Stories like Charlene's have become symbols of a health system stretched to its breaking point, despite record spending. As Maher put it, once trusted liberal institutions are now unraveling under their own ideology. The gap between progressive promises and real-world outcomes is no longer theoretical. It's measured in lives and lost trust. A high school in Ontario found itself at the center of a debate over identity and education when a teacher's shifting pronouns left students and parents bewildered. The teacher, known as Kayla Lemieux, had recently transitioned and adopted she/her pronouns, only to later revert to a previous name and presentation. Parents pressed the school board for clear answers, while staff emails, later obtained by journalists, revealed real anxiety about what to say in class and what might bring legal trouble. Some teachers worried about making a mistake and facing complaints. Others questioned whether anyone actually understood the rules. Maher zeroed in on the scene. This isn't education, it's theater. When identity changes with the wind, clarity disappears. For families watching from the sidelines, classroom policy had become a maze, and the search for simple answers only deepened the confusion. Across Europe, health agencies have begun to reverse course on medical transitions for minors. In 2023, NHS England issued a policy limiting puberty blockers to clinical trials only, citing concerns over weak evidence and long-term risks. Sweden's National Board of Health and Welfare followed suit in 2022, recommending that puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones be reserved for rare cases, and only under strict research protocols. Finland's Council for Choices in Healthcare took a similar stance, prioritizing psychological support and restricting medical interventions to exceptional circumstances after thorough evaluation. Each of these countries had once led the way on gender-affirming care, but official reviews now urge greater caution. Against this backdrop, Maher points out, on the trans issue, America is no ands, ifs, or buts about it. Absolutely alone in the world now, an outlier country. The US and Canada stand increasingly isolated as peer nations tighten their guidelines. Polls from the Angus Reid Institute show a clear shift in Canada's political center. In September 2025, 47% of Canadians said the government is too focused on divisive identity politics, up 9 points from 2 years earlier. Among moderates, conservative support jumped from 21% to 31%, the largest swing in over a decade. Nearly half of these voters now cite woke policies as their top reason for leaving the center-left. Maher sums it up with a metaphor. Liberals are the gas pedal, conservatives the brakes, but you don't floor the gas if you're driving off a cliff. The numbers suggest many suburban and moderate voters are responding to what they see as overreach, not just on economics, but on culture war issues that shape daily life. These aren't fringe reactions, they're the new reality in national polling. In 2023, Canada's population surged by 1.3 million, a record increase that outpaced housing supply and left the country facing a projected shortfall of 3.5 million homes by 2030. Despite spending 13% of its GDP on healthcare, Canada ranks near the bottom for timely access among high-income nations. The country now leads the G7 in debt-to-GDP ratio, and recent polling shows a center-right shift among voters concerned with cultural and identity debates. As Bill Maher noted, calls to copy Canada have collided with mounting evidence of real-world strain. While some progressive ideals remain aspirational, the impact of rapid policy changes and unchecked ideology is still unfolding. Unanswered questions persist. Can Canada reverse its affordability crisis? And will other nations follow its path or take warning? The facts show that outcomes matter more than intentions. Before adopting any model, the data demands a hard look at reality, not rhetoric.